What's up, Tommy Jaggi of Fansided here with NFL expert Marcus Mosher. Marcus, mini camps are wrapping up here. We've got like a 5-week stretch of absolute nothingness in the NFL football world. Some people like that break to kind of recuperate for the next season. But this, Marcus, is a time for us when there's no news going on to kind of take our own creative spins and look ahead to the upcoming season. And today we are going to talk about one breakout candidate at each position around the league, give our ideas. We'll have a little back and forth here. Marcus, what do you think about that?
This is list season. What we get into middle of June, late June, early July. That's all you see is just lists everywhere because people are trying to fill content. Like, listen, we got nothing else to talk about. So you're going to see countless quarterback rankings and wide receiver duos. But we just decided to take a little bit of a different spin. Let's talk about some players that we think could have some big seasons. Some of these guys have already had nice years, but we anticipate them taking another step. And Tommy, you're going first at quarterback. I had a couple names that I wanted to mention, but you give me your guy first.
All right, let me give you one, and then I want to hear what you have to say. But I went with Drake Maye. So pretty chalk answer overall, right? I mean, the Patriots have a fairly easy schedule coming up this year. Drake Maye looked promising as a rookie, 15 touchdowns, 10 picks. Obviously, we'd like to see those yards per attempt number go up from 6.7. I think it was only 6.29 adjusted yards per attempt. They didn't have any weapons. They had nobody to throw to. And so when you look at what they did this offseason, and particularly in the draft, Marcus, it's hard not to view Drake Maye as that big breakout candidate around the league at the quarterback position. They got a left tackle in Will Campbell. They drafted a wide receiver in Kyle Williams, both a player that both you and I thought was a very underrated player this year's draft, a guy that can create separation, can do some yak stuff. And they got a running back in Travion Henderson, a guy that can hit explosive plays as well as anybody in this draft class. And maybe he'll be one of the top guys in the league at doing so with that home run speed. The collection of the resources, not to mention adding Stephon Diggs to the roster as well. And so completely new look team, new head coach. And so every reason out there to think that Drake Maye is going to do that. And then when you look at the player himself, Marcus, uber talented, 6'4" profile, athletic, strong arm, can make all the throws. He was a really young guy coming out, 21-year-old rookie. You project him forward and say, yeah, we can see all the signs are here. He should be able to have that breakout campaign, maybe launch himself into the top 10 quarterback discussion. Is that too rich, Marcus?
No. You laid out all the reasons why a breakout could be coming. I'll give you another one. Going from the coaching staff that he had last year to Josh McDaniels. And listen, I understand Josh McDaniels has some flaws as a head coach. Like it's not great, but he's been pretty good at developing quarterbacks. And I think this is an offense that's going to suit him well, get the ball out of his hands. The weapons, we'll see what Stephon Diggs can do coming off a torn ACL. We'll see what Kyle Williams does as a rookie, but this is just so much more of a modern offense that I think is going to suit him well. And you mentioned the schedule, Tommy, like this is an easy schedule for New England. So I expect him to be successful. I expect him to win a bunch of games. And could we see him have a big year 2 leap? Yeah, I'm fully expecting it right now.
Marcus, so I want to ask you then, if not Maye, who else would you have put in this discussion for the biggest breakout candidate at the quarterback position this year?
Michael Penix. The reason why is I love the weapons on offense, right? Drake London, I think, is one of the top 12 receivers in the league. Darnell Mooney had a fantastic season last year. They've got a fantastic offensive line. Bijan Robinson, one of the best running backs in the league. All that's going to help Penix be successful. But I actually think Atlanta's defense could be so bad that it forces Penix to just throw the ball a lot. Kind of like the way Baker Mayfield was last year with Tampa Bay, where he's forced to be, in a lot of these shootout games, and he's going to put up big numbers. I love what I saw from Penix in his 3 starts last year. I think Maye is going to be the better overall quarterback. I think he's going to have a better year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Penix has like 4,500 passing yards this year and 30 plus touchdowns.
Yeah, and Penix, I think, is in a good situation, too, with some go-to options in the passing game. You got a number 1 wide receiver. You've got a capable offensive line. And he showed some promise down the stretch as well when he took over for Kirk Cousins. Marcus, I want to kick it over to you for the running back position now. Who is your breakout candidate at running back in 2025?
Braelon Allen with the New York Jets. So I think this Jets team is going to want to run the crap out of the football. Like they are going to
Yeah.
want to be the most run heavy team in the league. And one of the things that we've seen throughout NFL history is that whenever you have a mobile, athletic quarterback, it really helps the running backs be more successful, more efficient. Like, just go through the list. Like, start with Michael Vick and what he did for Warwick Dunn and TJ Duckett, or what Vince Young helped Chris Johnson do when he ran for 2,000 yards. Like, it's across NFL history the impact that these mobile quarterbacks can have. And I think the addition of Justin Fields, compared to Aaron Rodgers last year, who obviously gave you nothing as a runner, is going to help these running backs be successful. We already saw Braelon Allen have a pretty nice rookie year at age 20. Now he's 21. He's younger than almost every running back that was in the 2025 draft. I wouldn't be surprised if this Jets backfield is more of a 1-2 punch than Brees Hall just getting a bunch of touches. I think in a downhill rushing attack, I think Braelon Allen can be really successful. I think he's going to have a monster year in New York.
Yeah, and Marcus, that was one of our biggest draws to Braelon Allen in the pre-draft process in 2024 was the fact that he was so young. And you see such a rare profile. I comped him to A.J. Dillon coming out. I think he could obviously be better than that. It's a pretty low bar to clear overall. But that's what I was going to ask you, and you kind of already touched on a little bit, the split between him and Brees Hall, because it has been Brees Hall heavy so far. It's been Brees Hall dominant. And even with the injuries he had early on, that big injury as a rookie, Hall's only missed one game since then. Do you think it's going to be more of an even split in touches between those two guys?
I do. I mean, Aaron Glenn, the Jets' new head coach, said this is a running back by committee, and it makes sense because I think Brees Hall is at his best when he's hovering around, the 18, 20 touch mark. I don't think he's somebody that you want to give 27, 28 touches because you want to keep him fresh. And I just think this backfield is going to have a lot of touches available because they want to lean on their defense, which should be very good, especially with Aaron Glenn running it now. And they want to limit the number of passing attempts that Justin Fields has. So could we see Brees Hall get 17 carries a game and Braelon Allen get 12, 13? I think that's very realistic. It's why I'm buying Braelon Allen so much here in year two.
All right, Marcus, I want to go back to wide receiver now with a selection that I made, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, but Ricky Pearsall is my candidate, my breakout candidate at the wide receiver position, basically among all else in the NFL right now, and I think for good reason. Last year, obviously, we'll start with, he had the gunshot wound early on that caused him to be in the non-football related injury, missed the early portion of the year, had to get back up to speed after that. And when you do that as a rookie, you're missing time as a rookie. That's valuable time. But by the end of the season, strung together some really good performances. The second to the last week, caught 8 of 10 passes for 141 yards and a touchdown. And then 6 catches for like 60 yards and a touchdown in the season finale. He had those breakout performances right when you want them to come right down the stretch of the year. Deebo Samuel's no longer there. He's in Washington. There's another 80 targets to go around. I know that you do have some competition, obviously, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, but you don't draft a receiver in the first round not to use him. And if there's anybody that can find a way to make just about any receiver work, it's Kyle Shanahan in that offense. I think Pearsall is a good fit for that offense. I do think he was overdrafted. I think he's a good fit for that offense, though. And I think that this is where we see him go from very limited production to potentially 1,000-yard season in year 2.
I mean, they're going to need him. I mean, they just don't have the receivers right now. It sounds like Brandon Ayuk's recovery is going well, but it's unlikely that he's going to be ready for week 1. Probably going to be a PUP candidate. Juwan Jennings, a good player, but not really a guy that you want to give a bunch of targets to. They drafted Ricky Pearsall to be a guy that can be the downfield threat. And we saw it at times last year. Like when he was healthy and he was right, he was a good player. I think the thing you're always concerned about with Pearsall is, can he stay on the field? That's been a problem in college and now obviously in the NFL. But in terms of talent and fit in a Kyle Shanahan offense, I think it's perfect. And I think he is a very good player that, again, stays healthy. He could have 1,000 yards.
All right, Marcus, I want to kick it over to you for the tight end position. And who are you going with here?
Brenton Strange. Do you think if I name Brenton Strange, most NFL fans even know what team this player plays for? Probably not. But we should mention Jacksonville moved on from Evan Ingram last year. I thought it was time. I think he was growing a little bit long in the tooth for that offense. But Brenton Strange is a former second-round pick from the Jaguars. And I know everybody freaked out when he got drafted in the second round of the 2023 draft. But you saw the flashes late in the season as to what he can do in this offense. He averaged just over 10 yards per reception, but that was with Mac Jones at quarterback. And now that Evan Ingram's gone, they drafted Travis Hunter. They have Brian Thomas Jr. They just need somebody who can be that middle of the field weapon. And I think Brenton Strange can do that. We already saw him post some pretty good games last year. I thought what we saw from him as a blocker in the second half of the year was pretty impressive. And I think in a Liam Cohen offense where your tight end doesn't have to stretch the field a lot, it's a lot of yards after catch, short intermediate stuff. I think he could have a big role. I look at what like Kate Otten did last year in Tampa Bay under Liam Cohen. I think Brenton Strange could do the same thing. So I think he's somebody who could go from a relatively unknown tight end to somebody that, is on our radar every single week.
Yeah, Marcus, admittedly, I was not the biggest Brenton Strange fan coming into that 2023 draft. And he's really slow start to his career. Only had 5 receptions as a rookie in 14 games. Had a bit of a resurgence last year, had 411 receiving yards. And I agree with you, though. I think I like the situation, I think, better than the player right now. And maybe the player will end up proving me wrong. But the fact that Liam Cohen is there, the fact that you've got 2 bona fide outside receivers, at least you should now, in Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter. You've got speed at the running back position. He's going to be able to work the middle of the field basically uncontested in one-on-one situations. And I think that he's going to take advantage of that after showcasing his ability down the stretch of the year. And I think that, and you got to remember too, the other thing is he did this and had that kind of second year emergence, despite playing 7 of those games with Mac Jones and an injured Trevor Lawrence the rest of the year. And so I think that is a very fair candidate to have here. And like you said, a much more under the radar candidate than when you'd be used to hearing about, particularly when we do these types of things. Marcus, the offensive line, we're just going to do one offensive lineman in general instead of kind of nitpicking each position. So who's your overall, like, one offensive lineman that you think is going to bust out this year?
Yeah, I wanted to stay away from like first round offensive linemen because it's easy. We could have said like, tackles from our teams. Tyler Guyton with the Cowboys, Troy Fatanu with the Steelers. I think Olaf Ashanu with the Jets. I think he's a breakout candidate. Yeah. We expect a lot of these first-year offensive linemen to get better in year 2. So I wanted to stay away from a big-name guy. Instead, I want to go with Brandon Coleman, who he was a second-round pick by the Commanders last year. I don't think a lot of people expected him to go that high, but he became a day one starter for them at left tackle. He played over 1,000 snaps at left tackle. And I thought he played his butt off last year. Like, I thought he was really, really good protecting Jaden Daniels. But now he's going to the right side, which is more of his natural position. It's what he played at TCU. The Commanders went out and traded for Laramie Tunsil, who was going to play left tackle. Coleman going to slide it at right tackle. I think this is somebody who can be a really, really good run blocker and somebody who could develop as one of the better right tackles in the league. We know that a lot of teams are putting their best pass rusher over on that right side facing these right tackles. It's going to be a big test for Coleman, but he already showed that he can hang in the league. They're going to get Sam Cosmi back this year, hopefully filling in that guard spot. I think Brandon Coleman, a day 2 pick from last year, who maybe a lot of people thought was a guard only in the NFL. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being one of the top 10 right tackles in the league as soon as this year.
Yeah, Marcus, I like that pick. And I think half the battle when you get into the NFL and you go from being an offensive lineman in college to the professional level is proving that you have grown man strength. And Brandon Coleman certainly does. I like the fit there. I think he's going to be good at right tackle. I think he's got enough athleticism, obviously, to make that work. So I like the off-the-wall selection there. You're going to go off the wall. Now I'm going to kick it to defense, and I'm going to go one that's maybe even more random than this, at least as equally so. I've got Isaiah McGuire among edge rushers to break out this year. And you might not have heard of Isaiah McGuire. He kind of worked in a committee last year in Cleveland. Obviously, Myles Garrett is the guy that draws all the buzz, and respectfully so. Zadarius Smith was in Cleveland up through the first 10 weeks of the season. and he was traded at the deadline to the Lions after that. But McGuire is a sneaky candidate here. Not super productive, only had 2.5 sacks in his second season, but he's 23 years old. He earned the third best run defense grade in all of football, and he has got stopping power at the line of scrimmage. He can hold, he's 270 pounds. He can hold up at the point of attack. And so when I say breakout candidate in this sense, Marcus, for an edge rusher, it's not straight up like I'm predicting him to have a 10+ sack season. I think he's probably going to fall short of that. And he still might work as part of a committee. They have Joe Tryon there now, a few other guys that might rotate in. But he is already proven to be one of the better run defending edge rushers in the league. And that counts for something. And you know that, obviously, as a fan of the Cowboys who've had DeMarcus Lawrence there forever. I think that he's already proving himself in that regard. 23 years old. I expect a big year coming and him to be that primary guy opposite of Myles Garrett, who will obviously alleviate a lot of the pressure there.
It's a great call. The Browns don't need Isaiah McGuire to be a 10-sack guy, right? Like, if Isaiah McGuire can be a full-time base end, get 5-6 sacks, maybe a couple of those are the cleanup variety, but to be an awesome run defender, it's a huge win for them. Yeah. They've got other pass rushers on this team that they can bring in on 3rd and 9 to help get to the quarterback. They've got some linebackers that are really good at blitzing if they need to do that. But where they struggled last year was defending the run. And I think McGuire going into year 3, I think this is a time for him to really show his value. He's going to play a lot of snaps. Last year, about 579 snaps as a rotational player. That's not going to be the case this year. He's going to be a full-time starter. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets up into the 800, 900 snap total. But you're right. He is a powerful, strong base end. And when you've got Myles Garrett, where all these teams are going to be trying to double team him, chip him, having a guy like McGuire that can win his matchup is going to be really fun to watch. I would not be surprised if this ends up being one of the best overall run defenders in the league. And if he plays well, Cleveland's defense could be a nightmare to play against this year.
Yeah, for sure. Marcus, I'm going to keep it from edge and go to interior defensive lineman with Gervon Dexter of the Bears entering year 3 now. Dexter is a guy who kind of had an awkward build coming into the NFL, 6'6", but shorter arms, a little bit light in the pants. We knew he was an athlete, though. We could see that at his tape in Florida. Now, these first 2 seasons already, sneakily has had 12 quarterback hits and 19 quarterback hits back-to-back years. I mean, this guy has backfield disruption written all over him, and he's just starting to scratch the surface of that potential. A guy that played limited college snaps. We knew he was going to be a project-type player. I think that Dexter is going to be a breakout candidate on the Chicago Bears in 2025.
Yeah, it's a great call. So Gervon Dexter last year had the 4th most quarterback hits among defensive tackles, only one fewer than Chris Jones. And you're right. When the Bears drafted Dexter out of Florida, they were taking a chance on a long, athletic defensive tackle that just really hadn't put it all together yet. His rookie season was pretty rough, especially against the run. But I thought he got a lot better as an overall player. And by the end of the year, he was one of the best players on that Bears defense. And they had a lot of turmoil last year with Matt Eberflus being fired in the middle part of the season. But Dexter is very young. He doesn't turn 24 until October. I think this is a player who hasn't even scratched his ceiling yet. If he can continue to improve as a pass rusher, we already saw him take a big step forward as a run defender. I think he could be one of the best 3 techs in the entire NFL. The Bears have put a lot of money in their defensive line, trying to upgrade that unit. A lot of money in their linebackers as well. Well, we think that the Chicago Bears team is just going to be much better overall with Ben Johnson. Dexter has a couple of these primetime games where he gets a sack or 2 or makes a big-time play. I won't be surprised at all if he's starting to get some Pro Bowl and All-Pro consideration. He's got that type of talent.
All right, Marcus, let's kick it back over to you now for the off-ball linebacker. And
no, not me. This is you. This is your guy. I want you to talk about Payton.
Oh, you want me? Okay.
Well,
so we have it in our notes here.
That's right. I put him on the list because I want you to talk about Payton Wilson because he's your Steeler guy. So go ahead.
Okay. So let me share my thoughts. And I'm interested to hear why you put him on the list. But Payton Wilson is a guy, and obviously, as a Steelers fan, it's very easy to see the upside, the
That sounded like
potential
Chris
there.
Collinsworth a little bit. Here's a
Yeah,
guy.
here's a guy. So Payton Wilson, though, both you and I agree that phenomenal college football player at NC State. If it wasn't for the terrifying injury history, and this is why he had to stay in college football for forever and came out as a 24-year-old rookie, reportedly played without an ACL, which I don't know how you do that. I tore my ACL before. It was a wild recovery. But to be able to not just play without an ACL, but to be able to test as a 4.43 athlete at the NFL Combine, to be able to come in as a rookie, get 78 tackles, 3 TFLs, a impressive one-handed interception down the sideline, like a defensive touchdown on a scoop and score. Like, this guy is already proving to be the splash playmaker that we thought he was coming out of school. And I heard Daniel Jeremiah talk about him as the best overall prospect to come out since Luke Kuechly. Those are his words. If it wasn't for the age and injury stuff, like if he was able to come out on time and not have the injury history that he had, multiple knee injuries, then I think that this is a guy that kind of has limitless potential at the linebacker position at 6'4". He's reportedly up 10 pounds. He was playing at 233 last year. He's at 243 now in Steelers camp. Yes, he's on the older side, but he's already showcased that ability. He's better in coverage than he is as a run defender right now, but he is just so quick and quick to diagnose plays. You could see that sideline ability. You can see him knife into the backfield and make plays in coverage. I just think that he is a true 3-down linebacker who's going to be better than Patrick Queen this year, who I think is a little bit overrated, to be honest, and going to be the best linebacker on this team, maybe one of the best young linebackers in the league by the end of the season.
Yeah, and he didn't play a ton as a rookie. He was under 500 snaps. That's a good amount, but it wasn't like he was a full-time player. But with the Landon Roberts, he left. He's with the Raiders now. I just would fully expect Payton Wilson to get a lot more snaps to be an every down player. And you're right. Like, Patrick Queen had a pretty disappointing season, but I think a lot of people expected that from Queen after a breakout season in 2023, playing next to Roquan. And then he goes to Pittsburgh, new linebackers, new scheme, struggles a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised if Queen is better this year, but Pittsburgh really needs that linebacker that can play sideline to sideline, that can cover, that can match up against some of these tight ends. They're in a division that I think wants to throw the ball a lot with the Bengals, and obviously the Ravens are throwing the ball more than ever. I think this sets up well for him to have a productive year 2. And Pittsburgh has made investments on the defensive line. They drafted Derek Harmon in round 1 this year. They drafted Keanu Benton in round 2 during the 2023 draft. Cam Hayward is still there. They should have a defensive line that can protect Payton Wilson, keep him away from the big guards in the run game, and allow him to run from sideline to sideline. So this is a big opportunity. The Steelers drafted Wilson with the idea that, hey, we know the long-term outlook may be a little bit murky because of the knee injury, but we believe when he's healthy early on in his career, he can have a big impact. I think it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, Marcus, and this is a team that has been desperately lacking options at the linebacker position since the season. A career-ending spinal injury suffered to Ryan Shazier back in 2017. They just haven't had anybody else to go along. They've tried as they may. Like they set draft capital on fire trying to move up for Devin Bush. Guy apparently decides to be a respectable linebacker after he leaves the Steelers. I don't know. A first, second, and third round pick is what it cost them. They've tried stopgap options. Just nothing has worked out. Do you think that Payton Wilson is going to be the guy that they've been missing all this time?
I don't know about that because, I mean, I still think he's got some issues taking on stuff in the run game, but I do think he could be one of the better linebackers they've had over the last 5 years or so. And Pittsburgh just needs him to be a solid option, right? Like, if you can just stay on the field, don't be a liability in coverage, which he won't be. He's really, really natural in that. I do think this is the type of guy that can make the overall unit better. Is he end up being a Pro Bowler this year? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised either.
All right, Marcus, let's move from linebacker to cornerback and talk about a young cornerback this year. Do you want to go first? You want me to?
Sure. I think of all the names that we're going to mention here, outside of Drake Maye, this is the player that I think could have the biggest impact on a team's ceiling, and that's Nate Wiggins of the Baltimore Ravens. Wiggins was really good as a rookie. He played 679 snaps, but the problem with Wiggins, even going back to Clemson, has just always dealt with these nagging injuries. Nothing overly serious, nothing like Payton Wilson, where multiple knee injuries, just a lot of nagging injuries that have gotten in the way. But what we saw from Wiggins as a rookie is a dynamic outside cornerback with unbelievable speed. He's really good at stopping the run. He's not afraid to come up and tackle. And with Baltimore already having, an elite defense, they've got two awesome safeties now with Kyle Hamilton, Malachi Starks. They've got Marlon Humphrey, who they can move inside if needed. I think Nate Wiggins has a chance to be a Pro Bowl cornerback for the Ravens. And if that's the case, if he ends up becoming that type of outside cornerback, I'm not sure how you're going to move the ball in this defense, because they're so stout up front. They've got so many smart players in the middle of the field with Roquan and Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks. And now you give them a bona fide outside corner that can lock up number one receivers. That's terrifying to think about. I think Nate Wiggins has a chance to be a real difference maker for the Ravens this year.
Yeah, Marcus, this was such an interesting evaluation during the 2024 NFL draft. I really liked Wiggins on tape. I thought he had sticky man coverage ability. That was a big draw, because anytime you can get a player who can stick with you in press man, that's always intriguing. There's only so many of those guys to go around in the NFL. And then he shows up at the NFL Combine, 173 pounds.
Yep.
Tweaks a hammy, running the 40-yard dash. I'm like, what is it with small guys? And just, it seems like they're just so fragile at times. And so that is the big knock against Wiggins. Can he stay healthy? Can he play a full season? Can he get his body in the mix there for 1,000 snaps in a year, which is what you want him to do? But the potential is there. When you have 4.2 something speed, the coverage ability that he has, he showed he even had ball skills there against Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a guy that has the makings to be a potential future number one cornerback in the NFL. He could vault himself into that status. And obviously there's a few other guys that we could have went with this selection. I mentioned Kamari Lassiter as one that potentially he kind of the opposite way, where he's not a great athlete, but just a very natural football player, had a good rookie season for the Houston Texans. But Nate Wiggins is the total package, I think, if he can stay on the football field, more than enough athletic traits to last a long time in this league.
Yeah, and think about what Baltimore is going to try to do. If they're going to make it to the Super Bowl this year, they're going to have to beat the Bills, and they're going to have to beat the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs have added Xavier Worthy in the draft last year. They brought back Hollywood Brown. They have Rashee Rice. The Bills, they have Khalil Shakir. They're hoping Keon Coleman takes the next step. But these are two teams that have elite passing offenses. So you're going to need these corners that you could put on an island. And Baltimore just hasn't had that over the last couple of years. They've had Marlon Humphrey, but because he's their best slot option, a lot of times that's left the outside exposed. And that's why when they get into these games against the against the Bengals, despite having an elite defense, they really struggle to stop Cincinnati. But I think if Wiggins can become that player, they'll finally have the horsepower to try to slow down these offenses. So again, of all the names on the list, I think Wiggins could be the most impactful when it comes to deciding, who goes to the AFC Championship game, who wins the AFC North. Keep an eye on Nate Wiggins in year 2.
Yeah, and just in case you were wondering why Marcus and I didn't go with the names like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, those guys already broke out. They were top 5 Rookie of the Year candidates on a Super Bowl championship team. Cooper DeJean obviously had an amazing run in the playoffs in the Super Bowl. So we went with someone who is scratching the surface and not quite there yet, but could absolutely get there by this year. And Marcus, let's clean up with the safety position here. And this is a name that you wrote down, but a very interesting player. So I'll let you go first again, and I'll back clean up here.
Yeah. So the Chiefs had a lot of tough decisions to make with their roster this year. They were over the cap going into the offseason. They would love to bring back Justin Reed, but it just didn't make sense financially to do it. And Reed's been a really good player and an important player in Steve Spagnuolo's defense. So I love Jaden Hicks coming into the 2024 draft. I thought he was the best safety in the class. He fell to round 4, and he's somebody that just did not play a lot in the first 9 weeks of the season. Never had more than 9 snaps in any single game. But in the back half of the year, you started to see his snaps go up, and so much so that he was starting to play 40 to 50 snaps per game for the Chiefs. I think Jaden Hicks is an awesome coverage safety that you can have line up against against tight ends. You can have him play in cover 2. You can have him play some free safety if you need him to. The Chiefs' offense is still a work in progress, despite having Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Travis Kelce. They need this defense to be elite in order to win these games. They were one of the league's best defenses last year. I think Jaden Hicks is going to have a big role for the Chiefs this year going into year 2. He's going to be a day 1 starter for them. Jaden Hicks in that secondary that is very, very young. He's a player that I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, Marcus, and who would have ever said 3 years ago that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the offense would be the overarching issue of the team and not the defense? But this defense was spectacular. I agree for what you already said. Financially, it made sense to move on. Hicks is a guy that's really intriguing because he had 3 interceptions on 330 defensive snaps. Yeah. Now, we know that turnovers are fluky. He may not have that same ball production, but he allowed a 59 passer rating this year, 12 of 20 targets to be completed for 7.2 yards a target, according to Pro Football Reference. He's a guy that is very intriguing. And again, is just starting off his career. I wouldn't be surprised now being in a bigger role if he is able to expand on that and have a very impressive second season.
Well, this is how dynasties and elite teams stay elite, right? Like you draft Jaden Hicks in round 4 a year ago. He doesn't play a lot, in the first half of the season. Then you ease him in. And then when you have to let someone go like Justin Reid, who is making, $12, $14 million a season, you have a guy already in the bullpen ready to go. And I wouldn't be shocked if Jaden Hicks ends up becoming a better coverage player than Justin Reid. I don't know if he's quite as physical in the run game, but Hicks is somebody that they are going to put a lot of work on his shoulders. And again, with this defense that requires you to do so many different things and wear so many different hats on game day, I think Hicks is going to be a very important player for the success of the Chiefs this season.
All right, Marcus, we will meet again next week, and I'm sure we'll have another fun topic to dive into. So join us again next time. We go live every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Stacking the Box. This was the No Huddle Show, and thanks for joining us.